Welcome back to the channel. Crypto Trend Trader here. Today we're going to be taking a look at Bitcoin. But before we get started, I'd like to remind you this is not financial advice. I'm not your financial advisor. These markets are extremely volatile, so please do your own research and trade responsibly. So here the Bitcoin chart on the 4 hour. We just got the daily close at 7. It's a little after 8 now. And we did just get a powerful sell-off from 7,300 all the way down to 7,100. We're getting a slight bounce, so we're back up at about 71, 78 at this point in time. It is starting to definitely look worse. You know, it didn't look good before, and now it looks worse. We are still inside of the descending channel after we broke out of our ascending channel and invalidated the 5-wave Elliott count. So we could go ahead and take that off here because there's just so much junk on here. We are potentially getting this head and shoulders now off of our previous inverted head and shoulders. So what's happening now is we're essentially going to take the fib from the bottom of this move down here to the top of that move and count that as essentially like a failed breakout, a failed wave, and then the structure is completed. So now we're selling back off. We came all the way down to the 0.5 initially, got that bounce back up when I was saying we could potentially be putting in the shoulder. We didn't quite get, we made it to the 382, didn't quite get back to the 236, but we got rejected and sent basically by the 382 and sent straight back down. And you would expect after you know, we bounced the 0.5 and didn't get like a strong breakout there, if we came down and put in a new low like we did, you would expect us to come down at least to the 618, which would put us at 7,033. I think the likelihood is that we're going to at least test the bottom of this channel down here, and then potentially we could get the bounce back up at least to the 72.63 zone. So I'm going to be looking to buy basically at 7,050, and then, you know, potentially looking to sell about 72.71, and you know, maybe even taking profits along the way on part of that position, depending how the market looks. But I would expect that to be a good potential swing. This is not financial advice. I'm not your financial advisor, but you know, I'm probably going to be taking a position into there. We'll see. You're coming off of our green 618, and that lines up just a little bit above the smaller blue 618 of this structure here. If we dropped any lower, honestly, than the 618 of the blue structure that we just did, like the little way up here, I would say that this head and shoulders is going to play out, because that 618 is basically in line with our neckline, that yellow neckline that we drew in here, and that would essentially be the break of the neckline. And then I would expect us to get this measured move in purple down here that we had put in, and that was going to put us basically at like the 6,400 range. And that may not happen right away. We may ping pong inside this channel some more. You know, obviously, like the longer, you know, a trend line has held for, the longer I would expect it to hold for. And because this trend line is our most relevant right here, we've got multiple touches on it, and you know, we're moving in a descending slope inside of essentially like that channel or that structure. But on top of that, if we go to like an extremely long time frame, let's just switch over to like our weekly, or we could go to monthly or whatever, but you'll see this trend line, essentially the dotted white trend line, comes all the way up and forms our market support off of the previous market lows of our bear markets. And we have found support here so far, and what I would expect to happen, like's happened in the past, you know, at the bottom of our bear market right here, we basically bounced that and got a substantial move to the upside, came back down, and then consolidated and just slowly moved up. So if this is going to hold, I mean, it has to hold now, because, and again, that stuff's all in the way, but essentially that's it. We bounced it, we got the powerful move up, but we got the sell-off, and now we're at it. So if we're going to hold and continue to the upside, and that's going to hold as support, I would expect us to essentially like price to just start slowly, steadily like grinding out to back to the top of this purple channel, and then potentially even breaking out. Because if we don't hold this line right here, you know, that's essentially like our it's a diagonal line of support, so it's a little more subjective, but you know, it is what it is. I mean, you know, it's very likely that other people are seeing like the same thing that we're seeing here. So, and since we took out the low, came back up, put a lower high, came back down, put a lower low, you know, the most likely thing that's going to happen here off this swing is, you know, we're going to come down and put in another lower low. Now, if we do potentially find support here, my big swing on this market, on the micro at least, is going to be this 78.75 range. If we can take out the wick of this previous weekly candle, last week's candle, to the upside, I would get bullish. And if we take it out to the downside, I'm going to continue to be bearish. And when I say get bullish, I mean like, I would start to consider a bullish scenario. But that's just like we were talking about previously. If we switch now to the monthly, because our low is at 65.55 and our high is so high at 96.66, we now have this whole candle as our range before we get any confirmation that we're either putting in a lower low or putting in a higher high. Otherwise, we can dance around in this like $3,000 range, indecisively, and I think that's most likely what's going to happen. Although I think that at this point in time, it's looking very likely that we're going to come down here for this retest. Let me switch over real quick to the shorter time frames. Like I said, we did get that sell-off. I would expect us now essentially to, reject the area that we broke down from. This was like our support breakdown area. I would expect us to get a pullback like off of the breakdown back up to as high as like 72.50, and then maybe not though. People are only going to continue to bullishly buying things up for so long before essentially like the bots are flipped and the traders are flipped, and there's a substantial differentiation between like the amount of people that are shorting versus the amount of people that are buying, because people are still like ambitious and long in this market, and that's essentially what capitulation represents. It's when like the majority of the people like admit that, hang on, this thing is not going to be going any higher before it goes lower. And we are essentially approaching some of the short-term areas that we're putting the trend into serious question right now. If we don't bounce this area right here, like I said, we were talking about bouncing this wick at the bottom here, and we did. We got a nice bounce off it, just like we talked about bouncing this support right here. And again, those were selling opportunities for shorts, you know what I mean, or to exit long positions or sell spot. We're not holding any spot basically. I mean, we're holding some spot. I take that back. But as far as like trading account wise, we don't have any spot cryptos at the time, and we haven't essentially for months. Anything we've had has either been like a scalp or essentially like a swing through a couple of these larger areas or short. So we are going to continue basically looking for key levels in the market and identifying them for potential reversals. But at this point in time, we're not going to trade against the trend. We're going to do what we do and do it successfully, and that is trade with the trend. That's basically our daily Bitcoin technical analysis. Looking very bearish, continue to look bearish.